They thought it was normal. That sets how it always begins. Not with alarms, not with sirens, not with someone standing in the street screaming that something is wrong. It begins quietly, with routines, with habits, with things everyone else is doing. A cup of something warm in the morning, a light glowing in the dark while they try to fall asleep, a smell in the air they stopped noticing, a pill taken just in case, a chair they sit in for hours, a thought they repeat to themselves. I'm fine. They didn't yet know. No one ever thinks they're standing inside the thing that's harming them, because if it feels normal, if everyone else is doing it, if it doesn't, it hurt right away. Then how dangerous could it be? Years passed, bodies adjusted, minds adapted, warnings whispered, then faded into background noise. And when the symptoms finally arrived, they felt sudden, unexpected, cruel. But the truth is more unsettling than that. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, patient, invisible, and it had been there the whole time. Some of them were young, some were older, some were careful, some were reckless. It didn't matter. What they all shared was this. They believed the danger would look dangerous. They believed it would announce itself. They believed it would feel wrong. Instead, it felt convenient, comforting, productive, even healthy. And that's what made it lethal. History is full of these stories. People who trusted what was common, who assumed that if something was sold everywhere, prescribed widely, recommended casually, it must be safe. If it was killing them, surely someone would have said something. Surely there would be signs. Surely someone would stop it. But sometimes the harm doesn't come from what shocks you. It comes from what soothes you. They didn't know that what they were breathing, what they were eating, what they were staring at, what they were ignoring, was quietly reshaping their bodies, their hormones, their sleep, their hearts, their minds. They didn't know that comfort can be corrosive, that convenience can extract a price, that modern life can hum softly while it drains you. And maybe you don't know either. Maybe the thing that feels harmless in your day, the small ritual, the background habit, the everyone does it behavior, is already carving something away from you. Not dramatically. Not in a way that sends you to the hospital tomorrow, but in small, cumulative ways, like drops of water against stone. The tragedy isn't set that they chose danger. It's that they chose what felt safe. They trusted it. They defended it. They built their lives around it. Until one day, a diagnosis arrived, or exhaustion refused to lift, or anxiety became permanent, or their heart failed without warning. And only then did someone look back and say, it was there all along. Tonight, we are going to walk through 10 things. 10 ordinary, everyday parts of life. 10 things people thought were harmless. 10 things that didn't look like killers. And we're going to trace the slow, invisible path from this is normal to how did this happen. But be careful, because as you listen, you might recognize yourself. And by the time you do, it may already be too late. First, you have to understand why they never saw it coming. It starts with comfort. A life that feels orderly, predictable, safe. You wake up. You go to work. You come home. You eat. You sleep. The patterns repeat. The world feels stable. You trust it, because it hasn't failed you yet. History shows us this is how humans fall. Empires collapsed. Not with a bang, but a whisper. People walked their streets, slept in their beds, believed in institutions, until everything shifted beneath them. We like to call it normal life. We like to believe that as long as we follow the rules, take the recommended steps, and surround ourselves with familiar faces, we are safe. But safety is often an illusion. Take the story of a town that drank from its rivers, believed their water clean. Officials assured them it was safe. Tests were done, papers signed. People drank every day without hesitation. The danger was invisible. The town looked healthy. The town felt healthy. Until the first cough. Then the first fever. Then the first death. They didn't see it coming. Not because it was clever, but because it looked normal. Denial is part of survival. The human mind protects itself from fear, from panic. If something threatens your world, your mind whispers, "It's fine. It's nothing. Everyone else is doing it." And that whisper is powerful. We repeat it constantly. Has it been careful? It can happen to me. This has always been safe. Sometimes we even dress danger in the garb of health. A pill, a supplement, a convenience, a habit, a screen to distract us. We trust it because it feels productive. But trust is blind when danger is invisible. The first cracks are subtle. A sleepless night, a creeping fatigue, a restless thought. Small changes that you dismiss because life feels stable, because your routines reassure you, because you believe safety is permanent. Yet the universe is indifferent to that belief. Nature, biology, industry, they move on, unconcerned with comfort. And while you're sleeping, scrolling, eating, living, the slow erosion begins. The first warning sign often appears as a faint signal, something you might barely notice. A small discomfort, a little confusion, a statistic that doesn't seem relevant. A friend who hints at a problem, but you laugh it off, and the illusion deepens. You think it's fine. I'm fine. Everything is fine. But sometimes, fine is the calm before the storm. Because the thing that kills quietly doesn't scream. It doesn't demand attention. It waits, patient, observant, patiently shaping its path until one day it steps out from the shadows, and the truth can no longer be ignored. Tonight we'll see how these quiet dangers first crept into everyday life, how they wore the mask of safety, how even the most vigilant minds allowed them in. And by the time the first cracks appear, the stakes are already higher than anyone imagined. The question is not if they settle notice. The question is, will you? It begins almost imperceptibly. A cough that lingers, a restless night, a slight shortness of breath, a momentary chest pain. Nothing catastrophic, nothing urgent. And that sips why it sips so dangerous. The human mind has a remarkable ability to rationalize. We see a symptom, a pattern, a warning, and we whisper to ourselves, "It's nothing. It'll pass. I'm fine." History is littered with these moments. In 1918, in cities around the world, people saw the first signs of influenza. Few worried. Some laughed. Some thought it was a bad cold. They continued their routines, crowded into markets, traveled freely, believing the world was unchanged. The first cracks often take this form. Denial disguised as reason. I don't feel sick enough. Distraction disguised as busyness. I still check it tomorrow. Faith disguised as hope. It can happen to me. And as these cracks appear, small choices begin to accumulate. A skipped doctor, hence visit. A delayed test. A late night at work. A fast meal, because there stays no time. A pill, taken without thought. They all seem trivial, but each one pushes the foundation just a little further. The first cracks are mercifully quiet. They do not scream. They do not demand attention. But if you watch closely, you can see the pattern. A slight fatigue after a long day becomes constant. A minor forgetfulness becomes alarming. A headache that won't fade becomes the shadow of a deeper imbalance. Yet almost everyone dismisses them, because life feels the same, because nothing seems urgent, because the illusion of safety remains. And this is the cruel genius of slow harm. By the time fear arrives, it is no longer early warning. It is confirmation. People reach for excuses. I'm just stressed. That's nothing serious. It's does age. It's does work. It's does sleep. The first cracks are never dramatic. They are subtle, almost polite. They give you time, enough time to ignore them. But time is deceptive. It feels abundant when it is vanishing, and then the cracks begin to multiply. One small warning becomes two. Two become three, and the mind starts to grow anxious, even if it refuses to name the fear. By the end of this stage, tension is no longer abstract. It is tangible. It is a shadow that follows them through every day. And still, they cling to the familiar. They cling to the rituals, the comfort, the routines. They cling to the belief that the world is safe, that the danger isn't real, until the first undeniable sign hits, until the first undeniable consequence of ignoring the cracks arrives. And in that moment, denial can no longer protect them. But by then, the path has already been laid. And the story of what comes next, the escalation, the choices, the irreversible consequences, has already begun. The cracks are no longer invisible, and the question becomes not whether they will break, but how badly. The cracks are no longer whispers. Now, they are visible. A blood test comes back abnormal. A doctor raises an eyebrow. A colleague remarks on weight loss or fatigue. A friend notices a change in mood. And still, denial persists. It's easier to argue with reality than to confront it. Easier to push away fear than to face the work it demands. Easier to convince yourself the problem is small, temporary, fixable, an anomaly, than to change everything. Look back through history, and the pattern is always the same. Nations ignored famine until the granaries were empty. Scientists dismissed early warnings until the experiment failed catastrophically. Families overlooked subtle signs of illness until the hospital bed became the only reality. We justify inhuman risk with comfort. I've never felt this way before. It can happen to me. Everyone else is doing it. And sometimes, even those with knowledge rationalize the danger. An industry convinces us that what is harmful is actually helpful. A friend tells us it's fine. A statistic reassures us that most people survive. The government says there's nothing to worry about. Authority becomes a shield for denial. But denial does not stop reality. Escalation is silent at first. A cough becomes persistent. Fatigue becomes chronic. Heartburn becomes pain. Sleep becomes impossible. And yet, people continue their routines. Because routine is comforting. Because ignoring the signs feels safer than confronting them. And then, the first real consequences appear. A missed opportunity for early treatment. A body weakened by years of neglect. A relationship strained by emotional distance. A mistake compounded by time. And the irony is cruel. By the time fear becomes undeniable, it is almost always too late to act without cost. The person who once believed in safety now feels exposed. The comfort they clung to now feels like a trap. The world that seems stable now appears fragile and indifferent. At this stage, panic can set in. Blame surfaces. Regret simmers beneath every choice. But the hardest realization is this. They could have seen it coming. They could have acted sooner. But they didn't yet. And the deeper truth, the one they may never fully admit, is that denial isn't just ignorance. It is a choice. A daily surrender to convenience, habit, and fear of disruption. And choices have consequences. The cracks have widened into fractures. And now the real danger, the moment where there is no easy escape, looms just ahead. The stage is set. The warning signs have multiplied. And soon, the point of no return will arrive. There comes a moment, a single, quiet moment, that changes everything. It may be a missed appointment, a skipped test, a dismissal of advice, a choice to continue life as usual, because it's easier. It is the moment when the path you've been on, so familiar, so comfortable, becomes irreversible. Imagine standing on a cliff. You don't notice the ground is crumbling beneath you because the view is beautiful. The wind is warm, the sun is shining, and then, just as you step forward, the edge gives way. For many this moment comes suddenly, but in truth, it has been approaching for years. A pattern of small choices, a tolerance for discomfort, a reliance on convenience, a faith in safety that never truly existed. All of it converges in an instant, and the realization is devastating. You could have stopped it. You could have acted. You could have saved yourself. But you didn't stat. Some people notice at the last minute. They panic. They scramble. They try to reverse the damage. And for a few it works. But for most, it's too late. Because the body, the mind, the life, does not reset. It sits the cruel paradox of slow harm. You live in comfort while the damage accumulates. You ignore the warnings while the cracks grow. You rationalize your choices while the consequences solidify. And then, when you finally confront the truth, it is no longer theoretical. It is tangible. It is irreversible. Think of a heart weakened by years of neglect, a liver strained by endless indulgence, a mind dulled by overstimulation, distraction, and exhaustion, a body poisoned by the habits that once felt harmless. The point of no return is not marked by a grand event. It is marked by quiet inevitability, by the moment when regret becomes permanent, and that is the tragedy, not the sudden collapse, not the shock of the end, but the realization that every warning, every crack, every whisper of danger had been there all along. By the time it arrives, you understand. You could have chosen differently, but you didn't. And some doors, once closed, never open again. What comes next is the slow, inexorable consequence of that choice. The world narrows, the options vanish, the silence grows, and nothing will ever feel the same. It begins quietly, a subtle falter in the rhythm of life, a hesitation where once there was confidence, a weakness that cannot be ignored. The consequences are patient. They do not rush. They do not demand attention immediately. Instead, they seep into every corner of existence, reshaping it without mercy. A body that once carried weight with ease now trembles under the simplest effort. A mind that once held clarity now stumbles through foggy thoughts. A heart that once beat steadily now falters unpredictably. Everything that was once familiar becomes alien. And yet, the world continues as if nothing has changed. There is no spectacle, no dramatic catastrophe, no flashing lights to signal the end, just collapse, a slow erosion of control, a series of small failures that compound, a life gradually constricting under the weight of neglected choices. Some try to fight it. They attempt to reclaim what has been lost. They grasp at fleeting remedies, frantic patches for a system unraveling. But collapse is indifferent. It cannot be reasoned with. It does not negotiate. The house of safety, built over years of habit, convenience, and denial, crumbles from the inside. Relationships strain and fracture. Health deteriorates. Dreams fade. And even the most stubborn resilience eventually bends to the pressure. And in the quiet moments when the lights dim, when the world is asleep, there is only awareness. Awareness of what was ignored. Awareness of the slow betrayals committed by comfort. Awareness of how ordinary choices, repeated endlessly, can become fatal. The collapse is not loud. It is not cinematic. It is a long, dim, drawn-out descent. And as the dust settles, as the echoes fade, there is only emptiness. The emptiness is not just around them. It is within them. A life shaped by habits they could not recognize as harmful. A body strained by rituals they believed were harmless. A mind burdened by the consequences they ignored. And sometimes, in those final moments, they realized the most painful truth of all. The damage was never sudden. The damage was never unavoidable. It was patient. It was cumulative. It was quietly waiting. And they did not see it coming. And as the world moves on, indifferent, The echoes of what could have been linger hauntingly in the silence. But even after collapse, even after loss, some lessons remain. Some truths survive the ruin. Some warnings can still be heard. And now, it is time to see what remains afterward. Silence. It is the first thing you notice after everything else falls away. No alarms, no urgency, no flurry of activity to distract you from the truth. Just silence. The aftermath is not dramatic. It is not sudden. It is a landscape of quiet emptiness. A house once full of laughter now echoes with absence. A body once strong now aches with memories of neglect. A mind once confident now drifts in reflection, caught between regret and understanding. And in that emptiness, realization slowly creeps in. They see it now. Every ignored sign, every rationalization, every tiny choice that seemed inconsequential at the time, but was shaping this outcome all along. It is a painful clarity, the kind that weighs on the chest, presses on the mind, and stretches time into something unbearable. They remember the early warnings, the whispers of discomfort, the fleeting moments when they almost acted, almost changed, and they see how easily those moments slipped by. Regret is patient. It does not shout. It does not demand attention immediately. It sits quietly beside you, reminding you, over and over, of what could have been. And yet, amidst the regret, there is understanding, an awareness of how subtle danger can be, how invisible threats accumulate, how ordinary, everyday decisions shape not just moments but lifetimes. This is the weight of aftermath. Not destruction, not chaos, not spectacle, but reflection, recognition, the slow, haunting understanding that life can shift without fanfare, and you may not notice until it is too late. Some carry this realization with them, reshaping what remains. Others are left only with memory. A life once lived, now marked by what was ignored. And if there is a lesson in this silence, it is simple yet terrifying. The line between safety and harm is thinner than you think. The choices that seem harmless today can define the years you have left. And as you sit in this quiet, as the shadows grow longer, one question begins to stir. Will you recognize danger before it becomes irreversible? Or will you wait, as they did, until the cracks are fractures, the fractures are collapse, and there is nothing left to reclaim? The answer is already shaping itself in the life you are living right now. And soon, it will be time to confront it directly. Now listen closely. The story you've just witnessed is not just theirs. It could be yours. The invisible dangers, the comforting habits, the routines you believe are harmless. They are patient. They are silent. And they do not wait for permission. Every choice you make today, what you eat, what you breathe, how you rest, how you think, matters more than you realize. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now, the world does not announce danger. It does not warn. It does not pause for you to prepare. You might feel fine. You might feel strong. You might feel invincible. But invisible harm grows in quiet spaces, in the air you take for granted, in the convenience you rely on, in the screens that distract, in the habits you justify. And the tragedy is simple. By the time the damage is visible, it is often irreversible. So ask yourself, right now, what in your life feels safe, but might be quietly shaping your decline? What comfort might be corrosive? What routine might be your undoing? You do not have to wait for a collapse to notice. You do not have to reach the point of no return. Awareness is the first step. Recognition is the second. Action is the only thing that can save you from what they didn't see coming. And if you ignore this warning, if you continue as before, you may one day look back, like they did, and realize it was there all along, waiting, patient, quiet, unforgiving, and then it will be too late. Because sometimes the thing that kills you doesn't look dangerous at all.